welcome back to Africa, my love. My name is Tembi, aka The Rich Mogul, and today I'll be joined by my co-host, Kaiser, aka Mbonguseni.
Hi Timmy, how are you doing?
Fine, thanks. And yourself?
I'm excellent. Yeah, I've transitioned. Growing up, everyone knows me as Kaiser, but yeah, I've let go of the slave master's name, and so now I'm Mbongeni.
Okay, that's good. I hear you.
So what are we talking about today?
Today we'll be discussing our childhood experiences and how they affect our adult behaviors as well as our relationships, our adult relationships.
No, it's actually, childhood is the foundation, childhood, and I look at it as the core of the onion, so to speak, so it affects everything because everything grows from that. Yeah.
That's so true, I do agree. So have you had, growing up, did you have any experiences that you would say affected you, and how would you say they affect your adult relationships? How did your childhood affect your behaviors as well as your adult relationships?
Okay, so I went to boarding school at a very young age, and everyone in my life is tired of hearing that. But yeah, that's been an abandonment cycle, particularly early on in grade 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. I lived away from my parents, and that's made me not have a concept of home. Literally to this day, I don't have this attachment to a specific place. I don't have a place that has all my memories because my memories are scattered all over the place because of boarding school, holidays, home, moving around, and I've also lived in multiple countries. So yeah, it's really been me adapting to that has been a journey for other people who have like a stable identity and lived in one place, particularly like former partners and things like that. They don't understand how my backstory is so complicated. They feel like I'm being dramatic.
I hear you. And a child really needs stability growing up, so it does affect you as an adult.
No, it definitely does, because now I struggle with certain things, like being consistent in certain ways. I prefer chaos and randomness. I don't know why, but I get bored easily.
Oh, I get you. I get you. So I would say I also relate to that, but I went to high school for my whole I went to boarding school for my whole high school career, but it has affected me in the opposite, because I had abandonment issues prior to going to boarding school. And then going to hostel, it kind of gave that not sense of stability, but it made me like have a routine and a certain type of thing. And after that boarding school experience, I realized, oh, I always had chaos in my life, and I was always attracted to chaos. And because of that, now I love stability and I love routine, because I want the opposite of what I had growing up as well.
No, but boarding school does have its positives as well. From where I look at it is, I'm a very independent person, having to be away from your parents at that young age. So I've got very many theories about how to live this life, because I had to cope and figure it out for myself. So I was very curious as well. And so, I mean, a lot of my general knowledge, I think I attribute to having to figure things out for yourself without that guidance or example.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think touching back on independent, like I am very independent, but I think it also stems from not having, as a child, not having, what would I say, the adults in your life, or I would say adults is another word I'm looking for, but the adults in my life not being able to take care of me in the extent that they were supposed to, or being good parents like they should have been. So my independence also comes from that, from as a young child not being able to depend on the adult figures in my life. So my independence comes from that, like me having to depend on myself and figure it out on my own.
You have to step up. And I used to say that I'm like self-raising flower, because technically I had to create my own, I parented myself, which is weird because I'm very defensive as well. That's another like negative side, because I know I did the best I could with some of these things, and then people criticize you, and you're like, hey, when are you at a family? My therapist explains it as that you have to mature very quickly, and you do that because you create a barrier. So your real vulnerable self is on the inside, like the onion core thing I was talking about, And so you create more layers to yourself, and that's why you feel like an adult, because you are basing your behaviors and actions on expectations and your assessment and reading of situations, because it's almost like an anxiety response where everything could be a threat, and you're looking and isolating, okay, how do I deal with that threat? How do I deal with that threat? How do I mitigate that risk? And so that is why you kind of mature early, because all of those threats are supposed to have been dealt with by your parents.
Yeah. It's like when people say you're so mature for your age, and I'm like, it's the trauma.
Is this all the lining?
I would say from me being raised in a dysfunctional household, I was very attracted to chaos, and I thought that was the norm. And eventually, when I got into my first relationship, it was very dysfunctional, very toxic. And at the time, I thought that was what I wanted because that's what I knew. And eventually, when I started like healing and growing through that, I realized, no, actually, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to continue the cycle. And then I started dating better. I started working on myself. And as I worked on myself, I started dating better partners and started like knowing boundaries, all of these type of things that help you be in a healthy relationship. And then having healthy partners also kind of made me realize how toxic I am on my own, because before I dated a toxic person, so it was always so easy for me to focus on their toxicness and all of that. And then eventually, when I was out of it and had like started dating healthy partners, I started realizing, oh, I can actually be toxic in some ways. Like when something is good, I feel like, oh, I don't deserve it, or I feel like something bad is gonna happen because I'm so used to having like bad relationships or just being in chaos, that when I got like peaceful, good relationships, I felt like I'm gonna fuck it up, something's gonna fuck it up, this is not true, or type of thing. And I also realized how avoidant I can be as well, and how I shut down, and how I needed to also work on my communication as well, because growing up, I didn't come from a home where we communicate about things that are bad. So when there would be like conflict or anything, it would be silent treatment, and no one apologized, no one addresses it, and then we just move on. And then I started kind of bringing that into my adult relationship. So I realized, oh, communication is so important as well.
Well, for me, kind of the opposite, because I over communicate to this day. And I think it's also this thing of having the fear, and so I overdo it. I make sure that you really understand, and I try and get as much from people as I can. And they're not used to explaining themselves to that level. And so that also creates tension. And then in terms of relationships, when you mentioned the fact that when you see a healthy relationship, when you meet that for the first time, it's strange, disconcerting, because there's a lot of imposter syndrome. That how can this great person want to be with me?
Exactly.
And you're not ready for that, because I mean, I built myself. You know what I mean? So I'm supposed to have all this confidence. Everyone who knows me is like, no, he's a confident guy. But now you meet a person and then I don't know, I crumble somehow. Because yeah, it's a lot to have to address, particularly when you're communicating at a level that other person is not willing to.
That's true. And I also realized that loving someone, it's a choice, firstly, and especially in romantic relationships, you have to love the other person in your love language and have them love you in your love language as well. Like for instance, the communication, I'm very big on that. Like I'm a type of person, I need you to give me details, explain, communicate, like every single thing. And for some people, they'll be like, oh, that's nagging, when it doesn't necessarily have to be like toxic. It can be healthy communication, but like to the core.
No, I think there's a specificity that people don't like. People don't like detail. They like things not being like fixed.
Yeah.
And I think it's because they are secure. And so because I was very insecure as a child, so that's why I wanted things to be concrete. And also having had a weird mix in terms of both my parents, like opposites. Right, so I had one parent who was a bit avoidant, or a lot avoidant, and one parent who was a bit more affectionate and loving. And so I felt like I was two people. Like I had a split personality almost. I used to think I had ADHD. I used to think I was bipolar, because I was like, I think in these two different ways, which is back to this thing of your childhood experiences. So you have these two very opposite things, and yet now I am this one person I'm just this mix of contradictions. I think I know them. Do you want to go through?
We actually briefly touched.
I touched on, so there's the secure is what is mainstream, and if you had an ideal childhood and securely attached parents, then you will also grow up and be securely attached. Then there's an avoidant parent, and the avoidant parent then makes you feel anxious, which is the other type of attachment because they go together as a pair. So look at it as the one is in the middle, and these two are like left and right. So the more avoidant someone becomes, the more anxious you become as the child. I mean, the more avoidant a parent is, the more anxious you are as a child. That's, I think, the theory. Those are the three attachment styles, right?
Yes, yeah, it is. Secure, anxious, and avoidant. Yeah, that's true. And what attachment style would you say you have?
I'm learning. I'm trying to get to that secure space because I'm now in a relationship where I'm learning that I'm enough. Whereas I've always kind of been looking at relationships as a scorecard. Someone is keeping track. There's these milestones. We have to tick these boxes. Like, it wasn't natural. And that's what people picked up. My partners definitely picked that up. They were like, look, dating is like an exam. No, they literally, both my exes have told me dating is like an exam.
My attachment style, I would say if you asked me 3 to 4 years ago, definitely anxious and avoidant. I do have a lot of the traits that I am working on, but now I would say I'm heading towards the secure, especially since I've like done so much shadow work, so much therapy, and I've had my experiences with different types of partners as well, and seen like, okay, where I go wrong in those relationships, and have been able to identify certain things that I don't like and do not like. Because even before, like let's say about 9 years ago, if you asked me if I was an affectionate person, definitely not. I wouldn't hug you, I wouldn't touch you. And then through relationships and friendships, I realized, oh, I actually love like being an affectionate
physical
person.
touch then.
Yes, like I do like it, but before I didn't know, because I never had that necessarily growing up with my parents. So I would say now I'm heading towards secure. I would definitely say I'm heading towards the secure.
Yeah, I think I'm still a bit avoidant, and that's because I like explaining things to a point where I don't like conflict. I run away from conflict because I'm too scared that this person with this conflict is going to use it as an excuse to leave.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So that abandonment is still like a thing, and that's why now in this relationship that I'm in, I'm just like, I think the first year I was just daring her to leave. Because I was like, you're gonna leave eventually, like leave now. Why are you even here? But eventually she taught me something. I figured it out. I felt safe.
Yeah.
And so I started behaving in those ways, and so literally she has said how much I've grown, and even I'm starting to see it now.
Yeah.
I think 2 years ago when she was saying it, I was like, you're just gaslighting me so that, like a puppy, you're just giving me the positive reinforcement so that I keep doing the things. But now I see it that, okay, no, I'm on a journey, and I don't know why, but I seem to grow and then get afraid of the growth and then regress. And it's only now that I'm starting to be like, no, go through to the other side, because I think I adopted the saying like maybe 3-4 years ago. Don't go around it, go through it. Because I noticed that in life, it's a recurring thing, that the things we run away from are the things we're going to have to confront. So don't go around it, go through it.
And growth is not linear. Like, we all need to understand that, and you're constantly always growing. So that's also something I was complaining about in therapy, that I have to go to therapy because of my childhood. It affected me, and now I'm in my 20s, I'm 23. I'm going to therapy because of my childhood trauma, and now I'm dealing also with my 20s, the trauma from my 20s, as well as now. And then also stressing about the future, because people say don't stress about the future, whatever. But at the same time, you can enjoy your youth, but don't ruin your future, because there's certain things I need to do now in my 20s that are gonna help make my 30s and 40s better as well. So yeah, and touching on being safe in a relationship, I think that's also a huge factor, because especially now with my current partner, I do feel very safe. I feel like it's a safe space for me to come as I am. And I think that's so important, because a lot of times we want to feel safe, or want people who want to make us feel safe, but we don't create that space. And the thing about creating that space, you have to be actively working on it, and it's just certain things that you have to do constantly that will make someone feel safe as well.
Yeah, no. And that's the thing about growth, is it doesn't stop. And I also think part of my anxiety or anxiousness is this: I want to get to the destination as quickly as possible. I'm trying to eat up the ground and be like, where's the finish line? And so maybe that's also part of this, like, you know, push kind of personality, and that pushes people away actually, because you become like too much. Yeah.
Maybe if we get a work, social group, community, how do you feel you differentiate in those kind of settings?
Okay, so once you speak about the different areas of your life, then immediately that opens up a whole other thing where I used to compartmentalize so much. I used to custom make my personality for the person I was dealing with, which means a lot of people later on would say I'm fake, because I'm trying to be what you need me to be, and then I'm trying to be what that person needs me to be, and I'm a chameleon to a point where no one knows who I am and what I am, to a point where I don't even know, because I need something to bounce off. I mean, even earlier, right? I was like, okay, you go, and then I can bounce off that, because generally, I guess it's still affecting me. I'm realizing that right now, that it's still this thing of saying, I have to defend myself, I have to protect myself. And so let me understand the environment better than everyone else.
Or you not being safe in the environment, so you have to read the room first before you can show like the real you, like in a sense of people pleasing, would you say?
100% people pleasing. And also when you speak about, generally when I look back at my life, both primary school and in high school, my friends talked more at the beginning, because I'm still building a personality for you. So I needed to listen to you. I needed to understand, oh, you're interested in this, you don't like this, so I don't touch on anything that could lead to conflict. And then I begin to express, and then they're like, oh, you're actually a funny guy. Oh, you're actually not shy. And I'm like, where did you get that idea? Because in my mind I'm just like, no, but don't we all do this? Don't we all understand what the lay of the land is before we make any actions? I thought that it was normal until therapy. And even with therapists, I've gone through a few different therapists. I want to plug my therapist, because she's like, out of the therapists I've been to, this is the only time where I was like, therapy is not a waste of money. You know what I mean? The only time where I was like, I can see real change. So shout out Dr. Zama. You know,
shout out Dr. Zama.
Yeah. So literally, part of that process, we did deep work for about 4 weeks, where I was going in like maybe 4 times a week during that period of time. She custom made this thing, because she was just like, look, if we don't go deep, you're not going to get to the levels that you need to get to, because everything I do is kind of like at a surface level, because I'm protecting and hiding, and I'm not ready to be vulnerable and open about what the real issues were. And so when I did that, it freed me in ways. I grew, and yeah, unfortunately I then outgrew certain relationships as well. And then people kind of like, why are you changing? Like, aren't we all supposed to be evolving? Aren't we all supposed to be trying to be the best version of ourselves? I think I assume that too much.
Yes.
That what I'm doing and how I live life, everyone has got the same map in their mind. Yeah.
That's so real. Yeah. And touching on this thing that you said of being like a chameleon or people pleaser, I'm a recovering people pleaser. And I think also it came from, firstly, being raised in a, I would say a biracial home. And then having, my family is very different. We have all races in our family. There's also that. So I always had to like kind of read the room and fit in different places and be able to adjust. Then with that, and also not feeling safe in the environment that you are in as a child. So you always have to be on autopilot, and you're always trying to accommodate everybody else. But in the end, I realized that I was trying to keep the peace by making everyone happy, but in the end, I didn't have peace as well. So,
Yeah, you do it at your expense.
yeah.
And yeah, no, look, diversity is something that I can also relate to in terms of having a family where, like I'm saying to you, I've lived in multiple countries. I've got family in Botswana, I've got family in Zimbabwe, I've got family in South Africa, I've got family in Mozambique, and then people stay overseas. But you know what I mean? So also there's those different cultural nuances when you move from this one space to that one space. So I genuinely thought that people know how to be malleable.
Yes, like a chameleon.
Yeah. So when you meet a person who's got like a fixed personality, I genuinely don't know how to deal with that because I can't even relate. I'm like, where did you get that? But it's because that person was never a people pleaser. They never had to deal with the kinds of anxieties we're talking about.
Yeah, that's true. And in terms of our different relationships that we have, in terms of friendship, I would say friendship, especially, I'm going to emphasize on sisterhood. I think sisterhood has really saved my life and taught me like the standard. Like I date my friends, like we date each other. So they've taught me like what it is to be like in a romantic relationship without the coitus part or that type of part. And they've taught me the standard. And before that, I did have friendships that I had for long periods of time, and then we would have fallouts. And I realized that was because of my people pleasing, because at the same time I was keeping the peace and not speaking up about the things I'm not happy about. And then in the end, because we all like to think that common sense is common when it's not. So in the end, I would just like, after 5 years, you think we're fine. After 5 years, you make me angry and I snap. Then now I'm saying everything and there's no coming back from that. Now I'm bringing up all of the things I held in, and then now obviously after we fight, there's never gonna be we're not gonna resolve that conflict. So I realized whenever whenever you're not okay, or whenever something makes you feel uncomfortable, or if you want to be loved in a certain way, you need to communicate that. And then after that you can set your boundary, or after that you can decide, oh, I don't want to go further. And that's what I was doing in my friendships, which I picked up that, oh, I need to stop the people pleasing, and then the boundaries as well with your friendships. And then in terms of the workplace, my boundaries are very good in the workplace. I do put a mask, but I wouldn't say it's like a fake mask. It's terms of like being a professional. I'm not your friend. We co-workers, that type of thing. I'm not gonna talk to my co-workers about my life. They shouldn't follow me on social media, like those type of boundaries, which are so important to me. And I think they help not blur the lines, because I think that's also where the problems come from. People don't have boundaries, especially, for instance, let me make an example. If we were co-workers, right, and we're working together, and you say, oh, Tim is, in your head, I'm your friend because we talk every day at work, and then in my head, you're my co-worker. And then obviously I'm not going to invite you to my personal stuff and personal things. And because you're assuming that we're friends, but you haven't communicated that to me, you're going to think I'm a bad friend. But actually I'm not a bad friend, because we're not friends.
Because it's not, it's not an expectation that you've communicated. No. So when you speak about colleagues, what triggered me is my first job. I thought we were going to die together. I thought, this is my sitcom now. This is my friend's crew. We're going to be together forever. The first person who like resigned and moved to another organization, I felt so betrayed and hurt. And this person is like, it's a job, you know what I mean? But because I've been looking for family for so long, and TV like really messed me up. But so I had that expectation that no, this cubicle is gonna be it. You know what I mean? That's the one thing. So I didn't have those boundaries in that first job. And ever since then, I've learned how to build that barrier to say, you know what, these people are just part of the season. They're not part of the whole story. They're not the whole movie. And then when we get into family, I have a particular cousin who taught me this thing about myself. I don't know if I've fully healed it, but she's made it very clear how my problem is I wouldn't say what my issues are. I'd bottle them up, and then they would only come out when we're drinking. And I'd come from a drinking family. So now my drinking would be trauma drinking. It wouldn't be drinking for fun, hanging out, you know what I mean? So now this trauma drinking, so now when I'm bringing up these issues, it's with a level of venom that, to be honest, only your family can take. I don't have a big friend circle, and I think part of that is because of this not being able to navigate relationships and set clear expectations up front and stick to certain things, have boundaries and all of that. So the friends I've had for a very long time. But yeah, I struggle to make new friends because I feel like I don't know how to do it actually, because I mean my first friends were in boarding school. So boarding school created an artificial environment. We didn't need to make friends. It's just hi. You know
as
what
well
I mean?
as
And
like
that was
school and those type of things.
Yeah.
It's because you're forced to see someone every day. Like it's so convenient to have those friendships then, where you can't see beyond that. And then if you leave high school or you leave boarding school and you go to separate varsities or you start working, then you realize, oh, you have to actually be actively wanting this relationship.
No, you see, the friends I have, I don't know how they got here, but they only we only interact when we interact. And I think they understand the out of sight, out of mind of me. And I've explained to them boarding school, right? One of them did go to boarding school as well, so totally, you understand that thing. When we're together, it's a house on fire, but we're living our separate lives. There's no beef just because we haven't said hi every morning. And I think that's also another thing that led to crumbling relationships is the expectation of a hello every day. I was like,
that's so unrealistic, especially once we've left high school. I think that's completely unrealistic and childish, in fact, for an adult person for you to expect me to text you every day when we know that we're busy. There's so many things going
for me,
on.
it's not even being busy. It's I will do it like a robot.
Exactly.
And then you will still not be appreciative because now you know it's a programmed response. I'm going to set a timer. I can't. Like, why am I doing this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's not authentic. And
yeah, it's not authentic.
Yeah. So that's when you have to cut those people off. And I had to learn how to cut people off.
Yeah.
And as much as I've been afraid of rejection, rejecting people is something I struggled to do.
Wrapping up, in terms of our last point is ways that you can work on yourself and the different avenues you can use to better yourself. I would say I've been in therapy for years. I've been in therapy since I was like a young child, so that's definitely helped me, like in terms of being able to communicate my feelings, self-regulate my emotions. So I'd say therapy is something that definitely worked for me, as well as getting a good therapist. It's not like the first years that I started off in therapy it worked for me. It didn't. I wouldn't even say in high school. But after I started getting a therapist who understands me and who could call me out on my bullshit and know like when I'm lying or trying to manipulate the situation, I think that's very important. As well as my psychiatrist, he really saved my life. My psychiatrist actually saved my life more than my therapist, and they've taught me so many things, as well as the medication that I've been on. Took us years as well to find medication that works for me, specifically with my diagnosis, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for everybody. And the thing about therapy or medication is you can't just do that. You also have to constantly do the work, constantly show up. You have to do other things like exercising and all of those things that have been helping me as well. And it's each to their own. Like some people find gym therapeutic for them, when I find things like running or swimming therapeutic, and reading, like those type of things. So it's all about finding what works for you, and it starts with you also wanting to be better, because nothing's gonna change if nothing changes. So if you feel like there's nothing wrong, or you don't want to get better, or you just feel like you're fine, then you're never gonna be fine. Yeah, that's what I would say.
No, 100%. It's interesting that like every time when you speak, I'm just like, yo. So I also had a situation where I had a bad incident, a traumatic incident while I was an adult, very recently. And I blamed it on my therapist, the very good therapist I mentioned earlier. And so I went to see a psychiatrist and I got some medication. And I was like, no, I'm done with therapy, doesn't work, I'm gonna try the chemicals. And within 6 months, I was back into the old patterns on the medication. Then I went back to therapy, I looked for therapists, and I went back to where the person I blamed is the person who's now helping me. And so it's a combination of those two things. But another thing that for me works is writing. My brain has got too much. I can't keep it all in my head. So I have to have a routine where I constantly take it out and put it on paper, take it out and put it on paper. Some people get frustrated because I start different stories. I'll send you a snippet of this week, and then next week I'm sending you something completely different. You're like, oh, but where's that other one?
That's so real.
Yeah, but I'm just getting it out. I don't even think of it as a commercial thing yet. But once it gets there, once I'm fully healed, it's going to be something else. And yeah, I think you guys watch the space.
Yeah. Also, another thing I wanted to touch on lastly, I think with today's society and all of the social media that we have, capitalism is constantly pushing this idea that you don't need anyone, you need to be on your own, nobody owes you anything. And I think that specific narrative is so it's so toxic and harmful, because I did fall into it and I almost died like so many times, because I would just constantly deal with my problems on my own, and then it became too much because it felt like the world literally felt like it was bigger than it was. And so I had like so many suicide attempts and all of those type of things, and I realized that, oh, actually that is such a bad narrative, because we do need people. I'm not necessarily saying that we need you need your mom or your dad or like the family that you know, but you know that you have that community or those people who always make you feel better, always see the best in you. I think it's so important for us to hold on to that and constantly make time for those friendships or that community, because even with this podcast, like my family, when they found out that I want a podcast, and my friends, everybody came through and everybody's been helping me. Even now, just you guys coming to shoot because I've been in this funk of not shooting, that's helping me heal as well. Constantly having me reminding me that, oh, people believe in you, so believe in yourself now. But when you don't have that community and you're isolating yourself, it's easy for you to not even see that or do the things that you're supposed to do. So I would urge everybody to lean on your community and pour into the people who love you, and you will see how much better it gets as well.
Yeah, no, and I think capitalism is a whole other beast. We'll have to touch on it some other time, because it's incentivizing all the unhealthy things. And I just say, look, if you participate too much in that, you're in a death cult. And I know, because of addiction and having been to rehab myself, that yeah, we think we can buy our way out of this thing by drinking or doing other things, but yeah, it's not gonna help. What really helps is you being consistent and being consistent about caring for yourself, because it's so easy to be pointing fingers out there instead of looking within.
Yeah. Ooh. Real. Okay, so closing off, thank you guys. If you guys made it to the end, thank you so much for watching. Thank you to Kaiser for being my co-host today. It was a lovely conversation, and don't forget to plug this brand.
So in the theme of Africa, this is a business, it's a travel business, and there's tours that they organize across the continent and across South Africa. So they do multiple provinces and multiple countries within Africa. The name of the company is Africa Dumela, so please Google them, check them out. They're on Instagram, TikTok, and they have a website with a sale of merch. So this is one of the many designs that they have.
Okay, and shout out Africa Dumela, and shout out to Tungi's production company, Kiapo Media. Thank you for today, and yeah, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe,
and buy black. Because guys, I'm also wearing Shinobi, which is a brand from Soweto. I'm wearing Batu. Guys, we have to.
Yes, support black businesses, period. So thank you guys for watching. We don't have a book of the week this week, but we'll
get back to that.
We'll get back to that.
Basis, yeah.
I'm just glad that I'm back. But don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Bye.